my name is Gabby and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, then welcome to my channel, and today's video is going to be my August 2024 reading wrap-up. August was really the first month that I got a chance to start diving into my summer TBR. I made some progress, but there is still some of it left. But the good news is there is technically still some summer left, even though it is September at the time I'm filming this. So yeah, we will see, but otherwise the reading slump that I hoped would be gone at the beginning of the month is still lingering around. But we did have some series really break through that here, so I will have the content warnings linked down below in the description along with links to some resources, and let's go ahead and get into it. First up is Kimi ni Todoke From Me to You by Karuho Shiina, and this follows our main character Sawako, who has always had trouble fitting in due to her horror movie-like appearance. However, that all changes when she befriends the most popular boy in her class. I read volumes 4 through 14 this month, which my goal was to catch up where season 2 of the anime leaves off in the manga in preparation for a watch of season 3. And I did meet that goal this month, but now I just feel like I want to keep reading and then just like rewatch the anime from the beginning. So the goal has changed, and that is mostly because I am just really enjoying reading this series. It's been really relaxing and lighthearted, even though it does have its drama and its angst as well. And I said this last month when I talked about this series, but yeah, I'm still not really loving the drama. It just feels kind of annoying at times and even frustrating. But I do really love our main couple and just like all of the sweet, fluffy moments and friendships. It's just one of the few series that I do really feel like reading right now. I do think that that might change when like the weather changes a little bit more. So I don't know what's gonna happen when the fall really starts, but for now it has been a series that has been really easy to get lost in. So hopefully it stays that way because there are so many volumes left. Next up is Demon Slayer by Koyoharu Gotouge, and this follows our main character Tanjiro after his entire family was slaughtered by a demon, with the exception of his little sister, who is now a demon herself. So he sets out to try to turn his little sister back to normal and also avenge his family. I read volumes 21 through 23 this month, and then also something that we'll talk about a little bit later. But yeah, that's it. I have finished reading this series, and I am really glad that I have decided to read past the anime because Infinity Castle is easily my favorite arc, and Sunrise Countdown is like right there with it, even though I really didn't love a few of the ending chapters at all in some cases. And I do have a full review of this series up on my channel right now if you're interested in like my more in-depth thoughts about this series. But there were just so many moments in these 3 volumes that had me on the edge of my seat. I do still really love the characters, and it also fully got me invested in a ship that I've always really liked, but now we're in love territory. So yeah, it's not perfect, but I do really have a lot of love for these characters at the end of the day. There were tears at some point throughout these 3 volumes, and I ended up giving the Demon Slayer manga series 4 out of 5 stars. Next up is The Summer Hikaru Died by Mokumokuren, and this follows 2 boys who live in the same village. They do everything together, they're best friends, until something happens to one of them, Hikaru, which changes him forever when all his best friend really wants to do is stay by his side. I read the first 4 volumes of this series in August, which means I am caught up to the amount of volumes that are out in the US right now. And I started reading this series because I wanted to read a summer horror series, and yeah, this is that. And I thought it had a really nice blend in between the horror and then also slice of life and just an overall atmosphere that really did give me exactly what I was looking for. And then it also dived into some really interesting and complex questions when it comes to our main character and just this new dynamic and relationship that he now has with Hikaru, and then it also gave some really interesting character exploration and growth that I really enjoyed. And I said this in my reading update for August, but the series really does leave you thinking about what could have been. There's a lot of grief here, and it also does have a mystery component to it as well that did seem simple to me at first, but it has now convinced me that it actually does have a lot of layers to it. And I also just think that it's probably just well executed as well, and it's been really fun seeing the series dive more into those mystery components, especially in the later volumes. Again, I do have a full review of the series up on my channel right now, but the series is just really dark, really complex, twisty, and just kind of sad. But it has been really compelling so far, and I'm excited to keep reading and just see what they do next. Next up is The 100 Years War on Palestine by Rashid Khalidi. This is a non-fiction book. It's kind of just like what it sounds like it is. Like, it dives into the 100 Years War on Palestine and just like the pivotal events and family history of the author. I listened to the audiobook version of this. It has a ton of information in it, and of course a lot of history. It reads both kind of like a history textbook and then also an autobiography. And the history textbook aspect of this specifically is not usually my thing, but this was an exception to that, and I definitely do think it helped that I like actually cared about the subject matter. But I also do think like the autobiographical nature of this definitely helped as well. I feel like I learned a lot. I feel like a lot of the things that I knew going into this were refreshed, and even though I don't rate nonfiction books, I am glad that I listened to this. Next up is Skin of the Sea by Natasha Bowen, and Skin of the Sea is inspired by West African mythology. It follows our main character who, after praying to the gods, now serves them as a Mami Wata, collecting the souls of those who have died at sea and blessing their journeys home. When she saves a boy from drowning one day, breaking an ancient decree by doing so, she must then travel to the Supreme Creator to make amends for this and also save all of the other Mami Wata. But she ends up running into dangers at every turn, and also the boy that she saved really does know more information than he really should. My favorite parts of this book were definitely like all the fantasy and mythology aspects in here. There were so many interesting beings and concepts, but I really enjoyed the adventure aspect as well because it was through the adventure that we got to explore so much of the world and those beings. I just wanted a lot more from the characters in here because when it came time for some of the more emotional moments, I just didn't end up feeling them. And that's the case for the romance as well. I just wasn't that into it or invested in it. Like, they definitely weren't as flat as they could have been, but I do feel like it could have been more, and I do feel like that is why I'm not really like in a rush to read the sequel. But at the same time, the series also did really give me like Spin the Dawn and Six Crimson Cranes vibes. So because of that, I am interested in reading more of the series and just getting to see more of the world. But for now, I ended up giving Skin of the Sea 4 out of 5 stars. Next up is Demon Slayer Stories of Water and Flame by Ryoji Hirano and Koyoharu Gotouge. This is 4 chapters long. It does focus on 4 Hashira, although Giyu and Rengoku do pretty much lead it. And yeah, they're 2 missions, 2 chapters each, and I did kind of accidentally finish this volume this month because I read the first 2 chapters at some point last year because I thought Shinobu might be in them. She was, and I was happy and content with that and just never read the rest of the volume. But I went back this month because I was missing the manga and the characters, and I basically had a very similar hope as the first time that I started this. But just like replace Shinobu with Kanroji, and yeah, I read the final 2 chapters. I also like that we got to see quite a few of the other Hashira in the final 2 chapters, even for just like a couple of panels. But I will say, just based on the different storylines, I definitely do feel like I preferred Giyu and Shinobu's story to Kanroji and Rengoku, mostly because I just feel like I had a lot more fun with them and their dynamic just as a duo. But it was really interesting to get to see more of Rengoku. I feel like I learned a lot more about him, and then it was also just nice to dive more into like that time period at the Demon Slayer Corps because this does take place before the Demon Slayer manga starts. And I kind of have no reason to not give this 5 stars, so why not? Next up is the Avatar: The Last Airbender comic anthology for the Lost Adventures and Team Avatar Tales. And it's really just a bunch of short stories that take place throughout the time of the animated series, mostly. And it's just extra, oftentimes very silly content. That was also just really relaxing to read at the same time, and I love how whenever I dive into this series, I just get fully pulled back into it and invested in it. And it's just really comforting because I do really love this series and the characters. And the series had a lot of different art styles and different artists, and like the switches between the art styles felt really refreshing. I do feel like some of the stories were better than others in terms of content, and I also don't really feel like anything really blew me away here. Like, I don't feel like I really loved anything, but it was enjoyable. Like, I don't remember disliking anything, and I ended up giving this 4.75 out of 5 stars. Next up is Behind You Is the Sea by Susan Muaddi Darraj. And this follows the lives of 3 Palestinian families who have all had different experiences living in America. It's basically told in snippets, and each one follows a different character. And even though the characters are certainly connected with one another at times, the stories themselves are pretty much different, which is what I think that I liked most, but also kind of not about this book. Because while I was invested in a lot of these stories, they did just kind of end, and I do feel like that I could have listened to like a whole book just focused in on any one of these stories. There were a few exceptions, but for the most part that was the case. So like, I love that a lot of these stories made me feel that way, and I love that I got to read all of these different characters and just different perspectives, and just got to know so many characters overall, but I do feel like I was missing what could have been at the same time. But again, I was definitely invested in certain characters and storylines more than others. There were just 2 characters I specifically couldn't get into. One of them, again, didn't matter too much, but another one did show up twice. But I was invested in these stories a lot more than I wasn't. A lot of them flew by, honestly. And I do feel like each story was really well paced as well, and I ended up giving Behind You Is the Sea 4.5 out of 5 stars. And now it is time to talk about the other manga series that I'm caught up to and read chapters from as they released over over on the Shonen Jump and Manga Plus apps, including chapters 112 and 113 of Kaiju number 8, chapter 19 of Ruri Dragon, chapters 121 through 123 of Akane Banashi, chapters 160 and 161 of Blue Box, chapters 44 through 46 of Kagurabachi, and chapter 59 and bonus story 3 of You and I Are Polar Opposites. And out of all of these series, my standout once again was Akane Banashi. However, I also thought that Kagurabachi had just some really exciting chapters that kind of just laid out their plans for where they're going next, and I really like it. Okay, so that is all that I have for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and answer a question that'll be around here if you want to do that, and hopefully I will see you here next time. Bye!